The hidden truth behind police brutality cases you've never heard of, a Nigerian and global story. Intro. Living in any society, law enforcement is meant to protect, serve, and maintain order. But what happens when those sworn to protect us become the ones who endanger us? Police brutality is a global issue, affecting people from all walks of life. While certain high-profile cases make the headlines, the most horrifying instances often remain hidden, buried beneath systemic corruption, silence, and apathy. Today, let's delve into the deep and hidden truths of police brutality through the lens of Nigeria and the broader world. This is the untold story of the oppression, pain, and struggle for justice in the face of brutality. Scene 1. The Unknown Victim. A Tale of Innocence Lost. It was a quiet Wednesday afternoon in Lagos, one of Africa's most bustling cities. The air was filled with the usual sounds of honking horns and the rhythmic chatter of street vendors. But amidst this noise, existed a voice that went unheard. One life that slipped through the cracks. Chuka Okafor, a young man with dreams of becoming a doctor. Chuka, just 22 years old, had recently completed his pre-medical courses at the University of Lagos. He was heading home from his part-time job at a local clinic when he was arrested and held by the police. A group of officers from the notorious Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, stopped his car. They accused him of being involved in a robbery, though he was innocent. His clothes, his youthful appearance, and his dreadlocks made him a target, a common profiling tactic used by the police in Nigeria. Chuka tried to explain himself, offering his ID and school papers, but the officers didn't want to listen. They dragged him from the car, beating him as they shoved him into their van. With no witnesses and no way for Chuka to defend himself, Chuka's story ended tragically. He was later found lifeless, dumped in an alley. His crime? Being a young, black man in a society where suspicion is cast upon people who dare to dream. Scene 2. The Unseen Pattern of Police Brutality. Chuka's story isn't isolated. It's part of a larger pattern of systemic police brutality that has plagued Nigeria for decades. While SARS is perhaps the most notorious unit, the issue stretches beyond just one group of officers. Racial profiling, harassment, and excessive force are rampant throughout Nigeria, from the crowded streets of Lagos to the quieter rural areas where victims often go unheard. But this isn't just a Nigerian issue. Across the globe, police brutality and the abuse of power are disturbingly common. Take, for example, the United States, the home of the Black Lives Matter (BLM) movement, where police violence and racial profiling have led to widespread protests, civil unrest, and a global conversation about systemic racism and justice. Scene 3. Black Lives Matter, a global movement. The tragic death of George Floyd on May 25, 2020, marked a turning point in the conversation about police brutality in the United States. Floyd, a black man, was murdered in broad daylight by a Minneapolis police officer who kneeled on his neck for over 9 minutes. The horrific video went viral, igniting a movement that reverberated around the world. Black Lives Matter, BL. Floyd's death sparked protests not just in the U.S., but across the globe, including in African countries like Nigeria. People took to the streets, demanding justice and accountability for black victims of police violence. The BLM movement grew into a global call for an end to systemic racism, both in law enforcement and in broader society. People of all races united to call for equality, justice, and reform, challenging the status quo of police power and societal inequities. But even as the BLM movement gained traction, countless cases of police brutality, much like Chuka's, remained hidden, overshadowed by mainstream narratives and media silence. In both Nigeria and the United States, the systemic nature of police violence means that while some stories may capture global attention, many are lost in the shuffle. Scene 4. The Global Fight for Justice. While these stories of police brutality and systemic violence are painful, they have sparked change. The #EndSARS movement in Nigeria, inspired by the global outcry following George Floyd's death, has led to some reforms. In 2020, after weeks of protests, the Nigerian government promised to disband SARS, a move that activists hailed as a victory. But the fight is far from over. Real change will require dismantling the deeply rooted culture of corruption and impunity that exists within Nigeria's police forces, and the same can be said for the U.S. The Black Lives Matter movement has brought global attention to police violence, but systemic racism is still deeply entrenched in many societies. The key to lasting change lies not only in protesting but also in pushing for comprehensive police reform, better oversight, and accountability for those who abuse their power. Conclusion: what we can do. Chuka, Nina, George Floyd, and countless others may have been victims of police brutality, but their stories have ignited a global justice movement. The fight for accountability, fairness, and equality must continue in Nigeria and the United States. It is up to us to continue telling these hidden stories, to amplify the voices of those who have been silenced, and to demand real change. The truth may have been hidden for too long, but it's never too late to expose it. Together, we can ensure that no more lives are lost to police violence and that those who abuse their power are held accountable. When we stop hiding the truth, we will start to heal as a society. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to share this story with others. The fight for justice is not over. Please subscribe to my channel for more videos on social justice.